Hey guys, so my anxiety has been at an all-time high lately, just with everything going on and just being cooped up. It's been a struggle, and I think it is for everyone right now, so we're all in this together. You're not alone. I know people hate it when YouTubers are complaining right now about being quarantined and on lockdown and things like that, so we're not gonna complain today, but my anxiety's been really tough. So I thought today we would do a nice chill video where I can just talk to you and it be completely unscripted and not planned out really. This video honestly feels like a tag video. Do you guys remember like 7 years ago on YouTube when tags were a thing? This kind of feels like a tag video. As you can see by the title, we are going to be discussing 10 movies to get to know me, and this is actually started on Twitter. It was a trend started on Twitter that I saw, and instead of doing it on Twitter, I was like, I'll make it a video, and originally it was going to be a vlog. Obviously it's not a vlog, we're doing it on the horror channel. I just figured half of these movies are horror anyway, and I get a lot of questions as far as like what are my favorite non-horror movies, so this might give you a good idea as to some of those. Hopefully it'll let you in to get to know me a little bit better. I'm gonna open up a little bit here today and talk about why these movies are so meaningful, and I just want to say that these aren't necessarily my top 10 movies of all time as far as like favorites go. Maybe some of them are obviously favorites and you'll know those when I talk about them, but generally they're just more movies to get to know me as a person, like why I like them so much and why they represent me. Also, grab a snack, grab some coffee. I know I shouldn't be drinking coffee when I have anxiety, but I can't stop. I can't. Anyway, these movies are in a semi-order actually, so the first 5 are probably the most meaningful, and then the second half of the video would be ones that are a little bit more shallow of a meaning for me, but they still, you know, mean a lot to me. Anyway, let's get on with it. So the first movie to get to know me is my all-time favorite movie, and it is not a horror movie, and if you know me and you follow me on social media, you know that Interstellar is my favorite movie of all time, and it means so much to me. The first time I watched Interstellar was actually in 2017, and I kicked myself for waiting so long to watch this movie. Interstellar is one of the only movies that I will cry every single time I watch it, which is kind of rare. Even if a movie is very impactful to me, it is rare that I cry every single time, because obviously I've seen it so many times now, but every single time I think, well, I probably won't cry this time. And I do every time. So I fell in love with like astronomy and space and things like that growing up, but I never really came into my obsession with it until probably 2018, and that was after I had seen the movie, obviously. And I'm just personally so fascinated by space, and I don't know how people can go every day without looking at the stars at night or not think about our place in the universe. Like for me, it is just so profound and so meaningful. Like I am obsessed with it. I watch space videos every night before bed to relax. I'll have a few of my favorite spacey type YouTube channels linked down below that I watch every night. So obviously I like the visuals of Interstellar, however not accurate it is. I have heard that some things, some aspects of it are accurate, but obviously it's also the concept of the movie that is just mind-blowing. And it's very personal to me because the reason why I got into space in the first place was because of my dad, and he has a big telescope. He's gifted me with some very, very nice binoculars that I love. They're basically like a telescope, and I have to put them on a tripod to use them because they're so like big, but I am obsessed with them. So it's something that I feel like my dad had instilled in me from a young age, because he's always been fascinated with space as well and educated me a little bit on it as I was growing up in like my teens. And obviously if you've seen the movie of Interstellar, there's a father-daughter relationship in there. Now I don't want to get too personal about things and like my dad and whatnot, but there is a reason why I'm so connected to this movie, and obviously the father-daughter relationship in the movie and their love for space kind of as well. So anyway, it's just a very powerful movie for me in so many ways, and not just because it's like spacey, but because of the personal relationships in it as well are very personal to me too. So the next movie is obviously no surprise to you guys here on my horror channel, The Ring. of course, it's my favorite horror movie, and it is tied, I'd say, with Interstellar for all-time favorite movie, but I think if I had to pick one of the two to only watch for the rest of my life, it would probably be Interstellar. And that tells you how much I love Interstellar, because you guys know how much I love The Ring. Now, The Ring just kind of represents what I'm scared of most. I don't know why necessarily I'm so afraid of supernatural. As you guys know, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in ghosts, demons, or anything supernatural for that matter at all. So why this movie scares me so much even to this day, and why it's just one of my favorites, I'm not sure why supernatural is my favorite genre of horror. It's just what's most effective for me, and as odd as that is, that's what that is. So I have actually been thinking about doing a video all about The Ring, because I've never really talked about it much beyond, oh, it's my favorite movie, it's what scares me the most, I love Samara. So I thought I would do a whole dedicated video reviewing every single film in the franchise. There's 3, but and also talking about rings that came out after, like before the Rings remake, sequel, whatever, because not a lot of people talk about that in itself, and also share my collection of The Ring, because I do collect things when it comes to The Ring, and have been gifted things that I would want to share with you guys as far as The Ring goes that I love. So, you know, let me know if that sounds like a fun idea. I don't know. I can talk about why it's my favorite franchise of all time, and yeah, and why the sequel is good, and why Rings is good, and all of that, because I know that's controversial. Next up is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Now, Harry Potter, in case you don't know, is so meaningful to me. It is, I mean, I'm sure it's meaningful to a lot of millennials. It's our childhood, it's what we grew up with. I read all the books, saw all the movies in theaters when they came out, and it is just so meaningful to me. And in case you didn't know, I did my whole house Harry Potter themed for Halloween and Christmas last year, and I have literally cried recently about how I want that back. That's how much I'm obsessed with Harry Potter, is I just want my house to look like it did around Halloween forever. Unfortunately, I live with someone who doesn't like Harry Potter as much, and although we could compromise, I don't really need to subject him to Halloween decor year-round. So Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is really important to me because it's not necessarily my favorite in the series, but it is probably the most impactful to me because it is the movie I watched every single day after school in high school. Back in high school, I kind of fluctuated whether I had internet. I actually didn't have internet. Only at my dad's house did I have internet. My parents are divorced, and I lived with my mom, and we did not have internet. Sometimes we had cable. It really depended where we lived, but I generally grew up without cable and internet or a phone. I didn't have a phone till college. But we did have a DVD player, and I had a handful of DVDs, one of which was Chicago, that's one of them, but also Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. That was my favorite movie at the time, so every time I would come home from high school, I don't remember what year I was in, maybe junior year or sophomore, I think it was junior year that I watched Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban every single day after school. The next movie that means so much to me is The Blair Witch Project, and I think goes beyond just liking the movie. It pretty much represents my love for found footage movies. Obviously, it's one of the first that really popularized the subgenre, and also it kind of represents my love for camping and all things nature, and to combine nature and horror is just one of my favorite subgenres of all time. Other than that, it's really not that deep as far as why this means a lot to me. It's not like that special, but I remember watching it and thinking it was so amazing what they could do with horror with just limited resources and money and equipment and things like that. I was just blown away, and it honestly makes me want to make my own horror movies. So maybe there's a little bit of a bigger meaning, but if I were to make my own type of horror movie, it would definitely be similar or resemble something like The Blair Witch Project, because I just think it is so inspiring and so good. The next movie is Pet Sematary, the original. This is the first horror movie I ever watched, and also the first book of Stephen King that I ever read. So all around, this movie is very important to me. The story is very important to me. It is basically my introduction to the horror genre, which I think it is an amazing one to have as an introduction to the horror genre, because obviously something stuck and I became obsessed with with it. Also, can't stand the remake, but I think that's apparent. I did a review on the remake. If you want to see my thoughts, I'll link it. But I think I was so offended by the remake because the first, or the original, was so special to me and so personal to me, because it's my intro to the horror genre as a whole. So those are like the biggest 5, I think, that are the most impactful to me, that are the most personal to me, to really get to know me. Those would be the 5 movies that I would list to describe me just like as a person, as a movie lover. Pepe agrees. You guys said you don't mind when he meows. I'm gonna let him meow then. You'll see what I deal with every day. I feel like I'm doing that talking thing. I need to learn how to like talk better. That sounds really stupid. But I, the other day, filmed 2 videos back to back for like 2 hours straight, I think. And that was last week's videos. I filmed both back to back, and I like damaged my windpipe, my vocal muscles, I don't know, but it hurt so bad. The next day I could not swallow without it hurting and talk, so I feel like I'm doing that again right now. I'm telling you, all day long. Maybe I just need to like breathe better. Am I like positioning my neck wrong? How do you talk? I don't know. On to the second half of this list, which, like I mentioned, are just a little bit more shallow reasons. Pepe, can you come here, please? Come in. We're not gonna do that right now. So the next one on this list is Final Destination 2. It is my favorite of the genre. Well, I guess Final Destination 2 is pretty impactful to me. He's plain and paper now. You gonna lay there? I do think Final Destination 2 is pretty important to me and kind of a deep meaning. So maybe the first 6 movies in this list are a little bit deeper of a meaning, but it is my favorite movie of the entire franchise. I think because it is the most effective for me, because the accident in the beginning where they have the premonition is a car pileup on a freeway. And that, my friends, is my biggest fear in life. I didn't get my driver's license till I was like 22, and then I didn't get a car until I was 24. So I haven't been driving too long. I'm 30 now. So I've been driving like 8 years, but not really, probably like 6 years. And I only got my car and license so I could drive to the college that I went to, because I could no longer take the bus to my local community college. So I had a driving phobia for years and was never interested in driving at all, and forced myself to get over it, which isn't necessarily the healthiest way to go about getting over a phobia, but exposure really did work for me, and now I can drive totally fine. I do struggle with new environments when I'm driving, but I've driven to San Francisco by myself. I've, driven in the city. I've driven in LA. So I've really come a long way with my driving phobia. Final Destination 2 obviously exemplified my biggest fear come to life. And actually it's also a little bit deeper of a meaning as well, because I, for years, was convinced that's how I would die. I know that's morbid. I think we all kind of think about that. When you're just like convinced that you're gonna die young. I think a lot of people have that thought process. Another reason why I never wanted to drive, because I thought I was gonna die young anyway. And I know it's odd to then like Final Destination 2 given what it shows in the beginning, but I think because I like the horror genre and like to be scared, that is something that does genuinely terrify me, not necessarily in a good horror way, but it was effective for me, and it's still my favorite movie of the franchise. Next on this list, To Get to Know Me. Keep that in mind. These are not my favorite movies of all time, right? The Haunting of Molly Hartley. I just talked about this in the worst sequels because I hate the exorcism of Molly Hartley, but I like the original, obviously. Well, I love the original. And I think it's a good one to mention that like represents me a little bit, because it really defines my love for teen horror. That's, again, one of my favorite subgenres of horror, specifically bad teen horror movies. Or just like even Sorority Row, has like a place in my heart, and I've rewatched that so many times. So just like bad, those kind of movies. I don't even know. I guess you would call it teen still. That one's not that deep. It just kind of represents my love for bad teen horror, because that is a very deep love. So the next one is not a horror movie, it is The Lovely Bones. Although you could argue it's slightly a horror movie with Stanley Tucci's acting in that movie. It's very horrifying. But The Lovely Bones was actually one of the most beautiful, impactful movies on me until I saw Interstellar, and it was they kind of hold the same weight for me because The Lovely Bones has some of the best visuals I've ever seen in a movie up until Interstellar. So it really is one of my favorite movies and one of my favorite non-horror movies. I know it's slightly like religious in a sense. I've never read the book actually also because I'm worried that it's going to affect me too much because it is very disturbing of a story. I'm sure a lot of you know the story of Lovely Bones, but the movie is so beautiful, like the visuals, and I was obsessed with the soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack so much in my early 20s. So this movie was really important to me and definitely one that would like describe me as a person because the visuals were just so on point with just the beauty, and the soundtrack was very major in my early 20s. So very, very important movie to me. So the next movie is Girl Interrupted, and this is one of my favorite movies for the story and in the acting. Oh my gosh, the acting, guys. I think this movie is obviously so special to me because it represents my love for the psychology subject, and I think that the representation of the mental illnesses in this movie were pretty accurate, and they didn't like glorify it or romanticize it in any way. It was just very like straightforward. She goes to a institution where there's other girls struggling. It stars Winona Ryder, Angelina Jolie, Brittany Murphy. It is just such an amazing movie if you haven't seen it yet. So yeah, I just consider this one to be the one to like represent my love for psychology and mental health movies in general. I really enjoy that subgenre too. For obvious reasons, my degree's in psychology in case you didn't know. And I actually had a dream to work at one of these kinds of institutions, but I have since decided not to go through with that dream. So the last movie on this list is still an important one, but kind of a more recent one, so it's probably the least important to me on this list, but still very much represents me as a person. The Martian. So I know this is gonna sound really strange, but I think Matt Damon is so underrated as an actor. I know he's like hyped up, like people like Matt Damon, but I don't think he's loved as much as people need to love him. I think his acting is phenomenal, and there's something about him and his acting that feels so comforting to me. And I don't know what it is, but I could put on any of his movies and just chill out and it just calms me down. It's just like so weird. Anyway, but The Martian is easily my favorite movie he's ever done. Obviously my love for space comes back into play here. I had to put 2 space movies on this list at least because that is my favorite genre outside of horror. And I would say it's tied with horror and space movies. And again, if I had to only pick one genre to watch the rest of my life, I don't know if I'd pick horror, guys. I know. That's how much I love space movies. I actually made a list of all my favorites, so you can watch. There's, you know, all those. Definitely recommend all of those. Anyway, but The Martian is another one that makes me cry every time. It's not even like that sad of a movie. It's not meant to be like super emotional, but for some reason the David Bowie song in that movie is so good. It's the song called Starman, and I listen to it all the time outside of the movie and I still cry to it, and I don't know why. There's just something about the song and the story of The Martian that like gets to me because I could not fathom being stuck in space or like on a planet outside, like alone. That's another like biggest fear of mine that I will probably never have to experience, but it is honestly so scary to me as a concept. So to me, The Martian could also be a horror movie. Okay, so those are my 10 movies to get to know me. Let me know if you learned some new things about me that you didn't know about. I feel like I've talked about many of these things before in the past. Some are definitely not a surprise to you guys especially. Also, obviously leave your top 10 movies to get to know you down below. I would love to get to know you guys better through your movies. Not necessarily your favorites, but the ones that kind of define you the most. I hope you didn't mind this like chill, unscripted type of video where I just like talk about my love for these movies, but it's just like a topic that I really am passionate about, and all these movies I really love, obviously. So hopefully you didn't mind this kind of like laid back type of video. And let me know if you want more of these kinds that aren't necessarily like full-on reviews or deep diving into movies and things like that. Just let me know down below. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.